the year before. And now those same kind of expectations are going to be placed on them, going into next year. And now that we have completed everything and done the championship parade and all that kind of stuff, it's okay, I think, to start kind of looking ahead to next year and start kind of speculating of what that could be. They're obviously the betting favorite to win the national championship. They're very likely going to be number one in the AP poll going into the next season, and rightfully so. They've earned that. And I think for anybody that may have doubted them going into this past year, you learn that you just give Dawn Staley the benefit of the doubt, I feel like. Now, does that mean they're going to go undefeated next season and win every single game again? I don't know. They could. That'd certainly be cool, but even if they don't, that's not going to be a failure of a season or a disappointment by any means. You certainly hope, if nothing else, it just culminates with another national championship, which is certainly possible. They're not going to be able to play that chip on the shoulder card that I think they were able to play this year with her talking about that, expecting the unexpected, because and I don't blame people for thinking that, because we all thought it. It's like, well, when you lose the best class you ever had, the freshies, and they were on the doorstep. They could taste an undefeated national championship season and came up just short. It's not unrealistic to think that the next group was going to maybe take a little bit of a step back. That didn't mean that they were going to get bounced in the first round of the tournament or anything like that. But if Carolina would have gotten eliminated in the Elite Eight or the Sweet 16 or something like that, and you would have told people that before the season started, I think most people would have said, yeah, it's disappointing, but I could see it happening. And they just went out there and blew all those expectations out of the water. As I mentioned, they have the possibility to do what has not been done since the back-to-back national championships with UConn 15 years ago, where both those teams went undefeated. And similar to those teams, because it was the 08-09 team that did it first, then the 2009-2010 team was that second consecutive season. And in a very similar way, South Carolina is not really losing much in terms of, contributing players between the two seasons. Camila Cardoso is obviously going to go on and be a top 5 pick in the WNBA draft tonight. I'll get to that in a moment. But very similarly, that 08-09 UConn team only lost Renee Montgomery, who ended up being a 4th overall pick, which is where Cardoso is being projected to be. So obviously returning a lot of talent for next year, as well as bringing in a great class. As well, could certainly bode well for South Carolina for yet another season. On the note of Cardoso, and she was at the parade yesterday and saw a lot of pictures and videos of her, and truly putting a final bow on her college career, and what an incredible college career it's been between her time at Syracuse and obviously her time here at South Carolina this year, her being featured in the starting lineup and being the the most notable player from a national standpoint on this team, I feel like, and riding that all the way to a to a national championship. What a whirlwind of weekend it's going to be for her, because you go from having the parade yesterday to now going to the WNBA draft tonight, which will be on ESPN, that you can watch. I believe it starts at 7:30, and again, likely being a top 5 pick. We're just going to go on and have this professional career as well. So great weekend for her, great season for her, and she's certainly somebody that's going to be talked about for a very, very long time, in the history of South Carolina women's basketball and the role that she played. And I think we're all going to be excited to see her transition to that next level wherever she ends up in the WNBA draft, and hopefully can have a great professional career like so many of her, counterparts that obviously came before. But when you look at this next year's group, it's going to be led by seniors of Tina Pow, Bree Hall, Sanaya Fagan, and Sakima Walker. All those girls going to be, taking on that senior-most role. And obviously we saw what Pow was able to do this year coming in as a transfer, and how much she helped change the dynamic of this offense. Similarly, you're going to be looking at like Ashlyn Watkins, Chloe Kitts, Raven Johnson going into year number 3, which Chloe Kitts, it's really like year 2.5, but still, she'd technically be listed as a junior. And the great role that all 3 of those girls played. Tessa Johnson, Melissa Fulwiley, now having 1 year under their belt and exceeding so many expectations in that lone year. It's going to be exciting to see what kind of step forwards they can make. Because that's the thing, is as talented as they are, that was just year number one for them. As we've seen with so many of the great talented women that have come through this program, they're going to get even better as the years go by and are going to be the leaders of this team once they get in. And not that they can't be leaders in their younger years, but will really be the veteran, experienced leaders that you want when they get into their juniors and senior years here at South Carolina. Not to mention the fact you're bringing in a ton of great talent as well. You're bringing in Joyce Edwards. You're bringing in Madison McDaniel. You have a Deltac that is already on the roster, but she was obviously injured, not able to play. Unlike Chloe Kitts was able to when she came in early a season ago, and no signs of slowing down. This is truly a dynasty in its purest form with what Carolina is going to be able to do, hopefully for years and years to come here at Carolina, because you're just reloading talent, as we've seen Alabama football do for so many years under Nick Saban. It's like, well, they won the national championship, and there goes 17 of their 22 starters between offense and defense. How are they ever going to be as good again? And guess what? They reloaded with more 4- and 5-star talent, just kept the train rolling, obviously on the road to, just so much success there, which we expect here with South Carolina. But I do implore people, and I've said this many, many times before, enjoy every second of it. Again, the parade yesterday, third national championship in 8 years, milk it for all that it's worth, because you never truly know when that great run's going to come to an end. And I'm not saying that South Carolina's going to fall off of a cliff, all of a sudden and start being a 500 team and missing the tournament or anything like that. But this is a very competitive women's basketball era where, Gino and UConn are still really good. Obviously, you have Kim Mulkey and LSU that are going to be in contention each and every year. And yes, South Carolina's won the past, 15 or 16 straight against them, but there's no guarantee on that. You've got, Tennessee's now getting a new coach, but a Tennessee program that gave you a lot to handle this year. Like, there are so many, Southern Cal with Juju Watkins, and there are so many great programs out there that it's not guaranteed that South Carolina is going to continue to win national championships at the same clip that they've been able to do for almost this past decade. We hope that's the case, and we certainly know that Dawn Staley is one of the, if not the best coaches in all of women's basketball, one of the best this game has ever seen. And we don't doubt her abilities or doubt the talent of the players on this roster and the ones that are going to be on this roster for years and years to come, as long as Dawn Staley's here as the head coach. But again, there's so many great programs out there right now that it's not a guarantee you're going to continue to have this success. So again, I just implore everybody to enjoy every second of it. Milk it for all that it's worth. Go to the parades, go to the home games, relish every highlight. And that way, whenever this run ends, which we hope is a long time from now, Dawn Staley's here for another 10 to 12 years, and there's 7 more national championships to be able to add to the trophy case, and we can definitively say Dawn Staley is the greatest coach of all time when it's all said and done. But again, no promises, no guarantees. And again, just kind of enjoy it for everything that it is, for as long as it can be. With the success that Dawn Staley's having here at the University of South Carolina. Mind you, as always, you can check us out on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends over at Shepherd's Glass. If you're watching right now, you can see me on the live stream. You can also see my hat from our friends over at TEC Equipment Rental. Enjoy being out there on Friday for the halftime show. And I got a whole thing of free hats from them that I certainly appreciate. As I said on Friday, I'm a sucker for a free hat. So again, check us out on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends at Shepherd's Glass and powered by the folks over at Integrated Media. Also check us out on the 107.5 The Game app. You able to download on the iTunes store or the Google Play store and take us with you wherever you go. Baseball was down in Gainesville over the weekend and picked up a much-needed series victory. We'll dive into that, hear a little bit of what Coach Kingston had to say coming away from the weekend as well. You're listening to The Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your beautiful, beautiful Monday. Going to be in like the mid-80s today, as it will all week long here in Columbia on The Game.
Here's a fly ball hit to right field and hit well, and chasing it back and looking up and watching it sail over the wall is Florida's right fielder Ty Evans, and the Gamecocks are on the board. Parker Nolan sends one out of here to right field. It's a corner pantry home run, and the Gamecocks lead it 1-0.
Well, that's exactly what you need. You got to come in here and just set a tone for the weekend. And boys, Parker Nolan been doing it for the last few weeks. Does it again.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point Towerhead along with you here on your Monday morning. Derek Scott and Stuart Lake on the call over the weekend down there in Gainesville. That was Parker Nolan, the second at bat of the weekend in game number 1 against Florida on Friday, hitting that home run, and it did indeed set the tone for the weekend as the Gamecocks would hit 7 total home runs down there in Gainesville en route to taking 2 out of 3 games down there against the Gators, getting themselves back in the winning column as far as their overall record sitting in SEC play. And it was so important to just win to get another series win, because you won that one a couple weeks ago against Vanderbilt, which is fantastic. And again, Vanderbilt was the number 3 team in the country at that point in time. And while you've not been getting swept in your other games, you have only been winning the Sunday contest. As it is, South Carolina still has not lost, or has only lost the one Sunday game now to Florida over the weekend. But again, you take 2 out of 3 at the end of the day. That is the most important thing when it's all said and done. And good to see South Carolina again get back in that winning column as far as the overall series goes on over the weekend. 8-7 in conference play now, heading into a very daunting stretch against Arkansas and Kentucky over these next couple weeks, as well as taking on Tennessee and Georgia and other teams like that to wrap up the regular season, which is not going to be easy by any means. It's also your first road series victory of the season, and we know how hard it is to win on the road in general, but also or specifically when it comes to the SEC, and how tough every environment is, as Florida was. It looked like a very nice weekend weather-wise down there in Gainesville. They had their spring game on Saturday, so a lot of folks down there, a lot of excitement going on around the Gainesville program. And, also was the place that obviously your season ended a year ago down there in the Super Regional. And there was a revenge factor on the mind for South Carolina, and the win on there. And were able to redeem themselves and walk away with the victory, which hopefully bodes well for the rest of the regular season. We talked about Florida's pitching going into the weekend, previewing it with Jack Veltri, and talking to our insider from Gators Online, Nick De La Torre, on Friday as well. And we knew that was going to be a problem for the Gators, as they had the worst SEC in the ERA. They walked a ton of people, and we knew that South Carolina was going to need to take advantage, and they did exactly that. They worked them for 28 runs over the course of the weekend, and drew 21 walks, which is exactly what they needed to do. Now, they needed just about every single one of those runs, because Florida's offense was also, pretty successful over the weekend as well. But, again, at the end of the day, as long as you won, that's all that matters. Now, South Carolina did strike out 33 times, which Florida, a decent team when it comes to striking out opponents, and also proceeded to leave 28 more runners on base over the course of the weekend, which again is a glaring issue with this team that has been kind of persistent all season long. But again, won't harp on that too much today. We are just happy that they ended up winning the series, overall. One thing that I touched on a lot going into the weekend, specifically in the Friday games, was the top of the order not being as productive as you needed them to be. And when the top of your order is not hitting, usually the rest of your order doesn't follow suit, or at least it's not as successful, because your best hitters are going to be at the top of your order. And for South Carolina, it's been hit or miss as far as production at the top of the order through a lot of this season. And this weekend, you did go a little bit different. You had Cole Messina leading off, and then Parker Nolan in second, and then Ethan Petrie hitting in that 3-hole. And with those guys sitting in the 1 through 3 spots in the lineup, they combined to go 6 of 14 over the weekend with 3 RBIs, and Parker Nolan had that home run, as you heard just a moment ago. So that's a weekend average of, and that was, Friday night, where they went combined 6 of 14 with 3 RBIs and then 1 home run. The weekend average for them was 358. Which is really, really good overall. So a lot of production for the top of your lineup. And that was all kind of sparked by Cole Messina hitting in that leadoff spot, which, again, was not what he's typically been doing. And missed the last few games with, being in the concussion protocol, but a shift in the lineup for Coach Kingston, coming to the weekend, and it proved to be beneficial. Let's go with cut number 7 here, Dave. This is Coach Kingston talking about Messina being put in that leadoff spot.
It's what the hope was. You've seen a lot of big, strong guys in 2024 in modern baseball. That's kind of, teams are going that way with the leadoff there. Here last year, Wyatt Langford did it for them, and he's already the big leagues. Schwarber's done it. Judge has done it. Mike Trout does it. So I just wanted to, again, we're trying to find the best version of ourselves, and until we find it and feel that we found it, we're going to keep trying things. So we tried it today, and it was a good look. There's no question. It was a good look.
And he brings up a really good point there, because Cole Messina is not what you consider a typical leadoff hitter in most, ways of thinking in baseball, because typically you're going to have that guy that bats leadoff. Think about the Atlanta Braves with Ronald Acuna. Ronald Acuna is an outfielder, very speedy, very quick on the bases, where you can get him on. Let's say he gets a single, you got a very good chance of him stealing a bag, and suddenly you have a runner in scoring position with your number 2 guy coming out to the plate. Cole Messina, not necessarily the speediest guy in the world, but very powerful, and somebody that is very good at getting on base. Has a .302 batting average, one of the best on the team. That on-base percentage is at .442, and is also tied for 3rd in walks on the entire team. So just having that guarantee of somebody that you know is going to be able to get on base for you is is worthy of batting that leadoff spot. As he mentioned, with Wyatt Langford and what he did with the Gators a season ago, a guy like Mike Trout, with the Los Angeles Angels, like, it's not an uncommon thing. It's not a completely foreign thing in terms of baseball. It's just not as common as, having that speedier guy up front. But again, very successful from over the weekend, against Florida, and we'll see, if that's what they decide to do going forward. Pitching was good enough. And that's what we'll say for it over the weekend. Eli Jones, good outing on Friday night, kind of getting back into form there after a rough one the other weekend. You had Ty Good sliding into the starting role, decent through 4 innings. Matthew Becker, not the best outing on Sunday. Things got away from him, after only going through 2 1/3 innings. And bullpen, a little up and down. I will say the closers of Veach, Pitzer, and Polk were lights out, which is exactly what you want to see out of those guys. So again, pitching did enough for the weekend, and you're able to escape. Took a lot of runs, particularly in the Saturday game, but you're able to escape nonetheless, and come away with the series victory. Which, again, you need some momentum going into this weekend's or next 2 weekends, taking on Arkansas and Kentucky, who are the 2 best teams in the SEC as of right now, combined records of 35-3. Unfortunately for South Carolina, they had a couple of different bases loaded situations, but were not able to capitalize on that. And that means more money getting out of the pot in the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway as that continues on for this season. Whenever a Gamecock hitter blasts a Grand Slam, if it happens this year, hopefully it does very, very soon, then you can win all that money in the pot. Just go online to 1075thegame.com, register for your chance to win the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. We'll keep right on with the baseball conversation, talk a little bit about who the best performance of the weekend was overall for the Gamecocks. That's coming up. It's the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday morning on The Game. Again, another very, very busy weekend on the sports front. It's going to be another very, very busy week, not only in sports, but also with our friends down at Twin Peaks. Hockey playoffs beginning in just a couple of days. Puck drops over at Twin Peaks. Catch the first round of the NHL playoffs down there with our friends over at Twin Peaks. Coming up on April 20th, National Munchies Day. Need something to cure that cotton mouth? Grab a liquid Shots are $6 all day long, and cocktails are special for $8, featuring Captain Morgan, Parrot Bay Coconut Rum, Melon Liqueur, and Blue Caraco shaken and poured over ice, topped with pineapple juice and a dash of sweet and sour. So cheers to that. Again, it's going to be a very busy week for our friends over Twin Peaks down in the Vista. Welcome back in. It's the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. Time for a little Talking Hardwood. It's brought to you by our friends over at Georgia Pacific. And now that we're transitioning away from basketball season, we'll focus a little bit more on baseball now and who had the best stats of the weekend, or the ones that at least stand out quite a bit from the baseball weekend down there in Gainesville. As I mentioned, a lot of production at the top of the order for South Carolina. Cole Messina, great weekend, hit .416 overall with 3 RBIs. Ethan Petrie blasted a couple home runs, had 6 RBIs total over the weekend for a .307 batting average over the course of 3 games. But the guy that really stood out to me was none other than Dalton Reeves hitting in the designated hitter spot, and his weekend was quite spectacular. Ended up going 4 of 8 overall with 5 RBIs and 2 home runs. Those coming in back-to-back games that he played on Saturday and Sunday. And Dalton Reeves, to me, is somebody that I feel like is a prime example of making the most of your opportunity. He's only appeared in 10 games so far this season. He was somebody that, again, transferred in from Presbyterian a season ago, and we knew was going to factor into being a reserve type of guy, especially when you're playing catcher, a spot that's already been locked down by Cole Messina. But in the few times that he's been able to get up to the plate and get at bats, he's certainly made the most of it. 17 plate appearances so far this season, hitting .360 with 12 RBIs and 4 home runs, again, in just 10 games of action. Of course, he had those 2 3-run homers against Presbyterian. And really, he'd had one at-bat before that. I think he got an at-bat against Miami of Ohio to start off the season. But his first real, time as a true viable piece of the offense was against Presbyterian in that midweek couple weeks back. And he came out there and made the most of it against his former team, blasting those 2 3-run homers. So when he comes to the plate, you certainly have to watch out for him. We'll go with cut number 11 here, Dave. Here is Coach Kingston yesterday talking about Dalton Reeves and the contributions he's made to this offense this season.
He's a guy that had a pretty nice career before he got to us, and just had slowly but surely making improvements defensively, offensively, and now he's got about as clean a swing as we have. It's very low maintenance. He's got power, obviously. It's a very simple swing that he can repeat. So you combine all those things with a guy that's played a lot of baseball. He's an older guy, and he's given us some of our best at-bats consistently.
And again, this is the first weekend that he got to play in that designated hitter role, and certainly made the most of it as Coach Kingston mixing the lineup around a little bit this weekend. And again, he's a good option to have as another catcher when Cole Messina is not able to go out there and perform. Again, he just came out of concussion protocol himself, but with how productive Dalton Reeves has been this year, I think this is a guy that you've got to milk for all that he's worth. And I believe he does not have any more eligibility after this season. I know it's kind of funky with the COVID year and all that kind of stuff, but looking at his college career up to this point, I do believe this is his final year. So you're only going to have him for, at best, another 2 months. So I think you need to use him for all that he's worth and find a way to put him in that starting lineup, as much as you can. And look, it may be a factor of, there's just not a lot of tape on him as of yet at the SEC level. So those opponents could catch up to him the more and more, he's out there and the more and more that he's out there playing. But until then, put him out there as much as you can. See what you can get out of him and try and benefit the most from Dalton Reeves being in your starting lineup. But again, very well deserved for the weekend, that he had, up there at the plate, in that designated hitter role. And again, we'll see what they do deciding or how they decide to use him this upcoming weekend, taking on a very, very good Arkansas team out there at Founders Park. His next point here on the game, Tyler Head with you on this Monday. Of course, perhaps the biggest story from a national standpoint over the weekend was what went on out at the Masters. Scottie Scheffler getting his second career Masters victory, second in 3 years, to be more specific, taking it home with a great weekend overall. He was the betting favorite going into the weekend. He's the #1 player in the world and was able to wrap it up with a great final round yesterday. Guys, calm and cool, as collected as ever, though going into the weekend, he had a few other things on his mind besides what was going on the golf course. Let's hear cut number 17 here, Dave, of Scottie Scheffler not only being excited about winning the Masters, but also about becoming a father very soon.
Cry here, Butler Cabin. No, it's a very, very special time for both of us. I can't put into words what it means to win this tournament again. I really can't put it into words what it's going to be like to be a father for the first time. So looking forward to getting home and celebrating with Meredith. And it's been a long week here without her, but I'm just looking forward to getting home. Congrats.
So Scheffler said going into the weekend that if he got the call at any point that he would leave Augusta National, and I think he lives out in Texas, and go meet with his wife for the birth of their their first child, and that did not happen, and he was able to pick up the victory there, and now seemingly, hopefully within the next couple of days, he will soon become a father, and somebody that is certainly on top of the world right now. And as I mentioned, he was the odds-on favorite going into the weekend, number one in the world, which is a rare thing to win the Masters, doing that, and he's been able to do that these past couple years. Had the one-stroke lead on Colin Morikawa going into Sunday, and then put an absolute clinic in that final round. Back nine is obviously the most treacherous when you talk about Augusta National. He was able to birdie on 3 of those last 6 holes to really kind of pull away and pick up that victory. As I mentioned, 83 weeks spent at number 1 in the nation, or number 1 in the entire world in the world golf rating. Certainly no sign of that slowing down anytime soon. And when you look at what 2024 has been for him as a whole, off to a fantastic start. His last 4 tournaments. Now, Masters the only major of that, but still, he's playing his best golf as of right now. His last 4 tournaments: a win, a second out at the Houston event last week or 2 weeks ago, and then another win at the Masters this past this past weekend. So really nobody playing better golf in the world right now than Scottie Scheffler, and it's going to have a good shot at being one of the odds-on favorites to win going to the Masters next year. But again, a year-to-year difference. It's hard to go back-to-back, as John Rahm showed, as he ended up 9 over par and tied for 45th over the weekend after winning the Masters season ago. Now, yes, you can make the argument that maybe playing in the Live Golf Tour and playing less golf, in this past year may have contributed to that. But regardless, very hard to go back-to-back. Something that's not been done in a very, very long time, since Tiger did it back in the early 2000s. Speaking of which, Tiger Woods did make the cut, finished 16 over and 60th, which was the last of all the guys that were able to make the cut for the weekend. But, the fact that he was able to play the entire tournament, I think, is seen as a victory in a lot of people's eyes, because Tiger Woods, with the injuries and the back problems and all that kind of stuff, a lot of people didn't think that he was even going to be able to make it through the second round, much less make the cut and complete the weekend. But of course, he did not garner too much attention once you got into Sunday, because he was so far behind at that point in time. But regardless, Tiger Woods commands a lot of attention, and rightfully so. One of the greatest golfers to ever play the game, and truly still a superstar, no matter how good or bad he is. And for Scottie Scheffler, as great of a golfer as he is, I don't know if he can, be seen in that same realm, no matter how many tournaments he wins, how many Masters he wins, as, golf's still trying to chase and find its next Tiger Woods. We'll dive into that coming up as we wrap up hour number 1 of the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on this Monday morning here on The Game. I like Scotty Scheffler.
His stardom confirmed.
Jim Nantz on the call for CBS Sports. Yesterday out there at Augusta National, Scotty Scheffler sunk the final putt on 18 to pick up his second Masters victory in the past 3 years. A quick aside before we jump into the more of the Scotty Scheffler conversation, a sad bit of, sad bit coming away from the Masters over the weekend with Vern Lundquist calling his final Masters after being on the call for 40 years. And I know a lot of people aren't the biggest fans of Uncle Vern, as we love to call him, but I love Vern Lundquist. He's always been my favorite broadcaster ever. Growing up listening to him on SEC on CBS on Saturday afternoons, and certainly calling the Masters as well. Truly a legend of the broadcasting game, and hate to see him finally hang it up, but a well-deserved honor and incredible career for Vern Lundquist. But again, Jim Nantz with that call there as Scheffler sunk that last putt. And what he said sticks out to me because he says his stardom confirmed. I don't necessarily know that to be the case. And look, Scotty Scheffler is an incredible golfer. As I mentioned, he's been number one in the world for basically 2 years now. He's won 2 Masters. He's 20. He's younger than I am. His birthday's like 10 days after mine, and he's accomplished more in his life at 27 than I probably will in my entire life. Like, dude is on top of the world. He's about to go be a father here in a couple days. Like he's got everything going for him. But I don't know if I would quantify him as a superstar in the world of golf. Quite frankly, I don't know how many people you can quantify as superstars in the world of golf, because golf is worried right now, and rightfully so. Now, a lot of concern obviously comes from what's going on with the LIV Golf situation and kind of splitting the fan base, as there are a lot of people that are very anti-LIV, and rightfully so. I understand that. And a lot of people that, just hate to see that golf is splintering this way. And seeing a lot of these great caliber talents going and playing golf and in a place where you don't get to see it a whole lot unless you want to watch the CW all weekend or whatever it may be. So a lot of strife in the golf world right now from that standpoint. But also, when you think about the future of the game, there's no person I feel like that's positioned to keep golf as relevant as it has been in the past. I mentioned Tiger Woods made the cut over the weekend, finished 16 over par, and finished 60th, which was the highest, or which was the dead last of anybody that did end up making the cut. But regardless, Tiger still garnered so many headlines just from making the cut alone and showing some kind of semblance of maybe having a shot at winning the thing, because Tiger is the most famous golfer in the world, and he has been for a long, long time. And when Tiger Woods was at the height of his game, in the early 2000s, winning 1 out of every 3 tournaments, golf was just printing money, and everything was golden and seemed to be destined to be in the stratosphere of the sports world for a long time to come. But as Tiger has tapered off and dealt with his injuries and dealt with personal things off the course and all that kind of stuff, golf for the past 10 years has been trying to find that next person to position as the future superstar of this sport, and I don't think they've been able to find that. And, Goff for a long time, even before Tiger Woods, Goff was blessed with these superstar caliber golfers that garnered headlines and were known, to the common sports fan. Phil Mickelson, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, the list goes on and on. So many high caliber, super well-known golfers that were just a part of the game at the high level for a very, very long time. And yes, some of those guys like Mickelson and Tiger are still out there, but they are not what they once were. But they still garner a lot of headlines, regardless of how good they're doing. Just being in these tournaments gets people to pay attention. But whenever these guys decide to finally hang it up, I don't know who that next person is that's going to be that household name, that's going to appeal to the common fan. Tiger brought in so many casual sports fans and still does because he's Tiger Woods. And he plays, he took golf to this different level and had video games and drinks and all this kind of stuff named after him because that's how big his star power was. And I feel like golf, whenever someone wins the Masters, or goes on a run like Scheffler's done the past couple of years with the Masters, they try and position them as golf's next superstar, but I don't think anybody out there has those qualities. And they've tried to do it with so many people. Spieth, and now Scheffler, and John Rahm, and Dustin Johnson a couple years ago. And yes, these guys are great golfers. And again, Scheffler's the best golfer in the world right now, has been for the past 2 years, but they're not superstars. They're not that person that has the ability to cross over into that mainstream that can keep golf at the stratospheric level that Tiger Woods was able to for so long. The closest thing I think golf had to that was maybe like a Bubba Watson, who of course won the Masters, 10 years ago, and is still around, still playing, but he had that quirkiness to his personality because he's not only winning golf, but he's also like driving a general lead around and eating at Waffle House and posting it on Twitter and stuff like that. Like he had that, oddball effect, I guess is the best way to put it, where like he does not match the mold of what we think of when we think of golfers and stuff like that. And he had that ability to appeal a little bit more to the casual fan, but I still don't even think that went far enough as far as, needing him to be positioned as that next superstar in the world of golf. And look, I like golf and I pay attention to the majors and I watch it, as much as I can, when it was in reference to other sports. But I don't look at anybody in the golf realm right now that I say, yeah, that guy is the fan favorite. That guy, and yes, you have super golf heads that are into it every single weekend and pay attention to the minute details and all that kind of stuff that probably have their favorites. But as far as the casual observer, yeah, we have guys that we hate, like Patrick Reed. I think everybody hates Patrick Reed. And, Bryson DeChambeau rubs a lot of people the wrong way because he just doesn't seem to love golf as much as some of these other guys do and doesn't play it as much as, some of these other guys do. But as far as that definitive fan favorite superstar, I don't think golf has that right now. And it's unfortunate because golf is a great game. And, I think we saw a good Masters over the weekend. But I don't think Scottie Scheffler's that guy that's going to appeal to that common fan and, keep golf at the heights or even rival the heights that golf was at, so many years ago outside of the majors. Look, everybody watches the majors, especially the Masters. Like the Masters is always going to have that appeal, much like the Indy 500, regardless of who the drivers are in the Indy 500, people watch because it's just a tradition and a big event in American sports. Same thing with the Masters. Regardless of who's playing, people are going to watch the Masters, people are going to go to the Masters. It's always going to have that interest. But outside of that, you need star power to appeal for some of these other events outside of the majors to bring in casual viewers to golf. And I don't think Scottie Scheffler is going to be that, unfortunately. 1 hour down, one more hour to go. We'll talk to Stuart Lake of the Gamecocks Radio Network coming up next. Also get his thoughts on what happened down there in Gainesville for Gamecock baseball, picking up another series victory. That's coming up hour number 2. Tyler Head along with you here on The Game. Hour number 2, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point here with you on this Monday. Tyler Head in the Herndon Chevrolet Studios. Cap and Dave producing on the other side of the glass. Time to talk more Gamecock baseball after a successful weekend down there in Gainesville. We'll now head out to the Love Chevrolet phone lines. Welcome in for the Gamecocks Radio Network, our guy Stuart Lake. Stuart, first of all, appreciate your time this morning. I hope you had a good weekend down there in Gainesville, as the Gamecock baseball team did. We obviously know it is so tough to win in the SEC in general, but especially it is tough to win on the road. How big is it for this team to just pick up a road series victory for the first time this season in SEC play?
First of all, Tyler, thanks for having me on, but it's really, really huge. And I think Derek said it. We kind of joked, how many times did we say? We haven't won a series there since 2011. And, you go every other year, so that you can count that up. You just don't typically go into Florida and win series. And for this team, who I think Coach Kingston would tell you, he's still trying to figure this team out. He says it a lot to us as we talk about it. But I think this weekend some things got settled in a sense of, really just finding your lineup. I would be really surprised if Dalton Reeves isn't your DH going forward here, at least for a pretty good stretch. And pitching staff, I think they'll still be trying to sort out who's our Saturday, who's our Sunday. Eli Jones is certainly the Friday. So I think you got to feel good coming out of this weekend down in Gainesville.
You mentioned that lineup, and there was a change this past weekend with Messina coming back out of the concussion protocol, being put at the top of the lineup and having a very successful weekend at that, and everybody kind of followed suit. Do you like him in that leadoff role, or you think they'll continue placing him there going forward?
I do like him there, and the reason is what they kind of all joked around. He wanted to set the tone for the team. That's why Eli Jones wants to pitch on Friday. It was a short week, and they weren't sure if he could come back on that Thursday. He was like, no, this is my job. I'm the veteran pitcher. I'm supposed to set the tone for the week. So I know Cole, and Cole wants to set the tone for the offense. And, heck, we got to start. We laugh a lot, but the dude can run pretty good. I mean, he scored a bunch from first base. He stole some bases this weekend. So he brings a lot to the table. And then it leaves a left-handed hitter in Parker Nolan hitting second. And I think I'm an old-school kind of lineup guy. I love a left-handed second hitter because with Cole on first, which he is a lot, it just opens that up for Parker to get a few more hits.
Again, talking to Stuart Lake from the Gamecocks Radio Network. You also touched on Dalton Reeves there and the great weekend that he had. And this is a guy that has only gotten a handful of hits so far this season, 17 at-bats in the 10 games that he's seen so far this year. And as I agree with you, I think he's somebody that you continue to ride in that DH spot and use him for all that you can. Do you contribute his success to maybe not being, seen as much? And do you think maybe teams will start to catch up with him a little bit the more tape that gets out there on him?
Yeah, I certainly do, and Dalton knows this. He's a veteran of the college game. There'll certainly be a lot more on him now that he's on. They call it Synergy, which is all the colleges video, all their games, so it's free to watch, each other. So as pitching coaches sit down, and Arkansas will be going, "Who is this?" They're going to at least create maybe a more personalized attack of him, because I think everybody's just been trying to go, all right, he's left-handed, let's go fastball away, change up away, see if he'll chase. He doesn't chase, and that's what's been proven through his at-bats. And then when they have challenged him, he drives the ball. I mean, right now, you got 22 total bases and only 25 at-bats. So, I mean, he's a guy and 12 RBIs. So, I mean, he's a guy that right now, if I'm a pitching coach, I'm going, all right, I got to figure out who this guy is before this weekend.
The shakeup in the starting lineup as far as pitching goes. Again, Eli Jones continues to hold down that Friday night spot, and a solid outing for him in that victory over the Gators on Friday night. But more shifting around for Saturday and Sunday. Good getting the start on Saturday, picking up the win, and then Becker on Sunday, who did struggle a little bit getting put back in that starting role. What are your overall thoughts being halfway through the season, still trying to figure out what exactly your weekend 3 is looking like right now?
It happens. You would love to just roll out 3 guys. Florida was able to do that. We're talking to their people this weekend last year. They stayed healthy. But it's not that abnormal in college baseball to still be shuffling, I'll be honest, all the way through the season. And Derek and I had a 6-hour ride yesterday back to try to figure it out. And he asked me, he goes, why do you think the guy that pitches so well in relief maybe pitches different as a starter? And as a coach for all these years, sometimes it's because of the way they prepare. If you don't know when you're pitching, you have to have yourself mentally ready. Sometimes when you're a starter, you just prepare different. So I don't know. I would think there'd be a shakeup again this weekend in our pitching staff. But really, as long as these guys keep responding out of the bullpen the way they have, I don't think it's as big an issue as maybe sometimes we do make it out to be.
And that's a good point that you bring up. How do you look at this from Matt Williams' standpoint, where you are kind of shifting these guys around, going from the bullpen to being in the starting lineup, to kind of know where that line is, to let them keep going or go ahead and pull them when things start to look a little bit tough when they are starting?
Well, you look at the hitters that's coming up. A few times this weekend you visit, and maybe you stay with a pitcher that it seems like you should be coming out, but you know that guy that's hitting doesn't hit a changeup. Or you know his splits, and he doesn't hit a right-hander as good as a left-hander. So as much as sometimes it does involve luck, most of the decisions, you're basing them on the information you have. And that's why I say that a lot. And pitching is really hard. I was a catcher. I was a head coach, so I was involved in the pitching aspect a bunch in my career. You just kind of go with your feel a lot, and you go out and you ask those guys how they're feeling, and you hope they give you the honest answer. I think most of the time they do, and I think Matt's done a good job. It's hard sometimes to keep mixing and matching the way he's had to do.
Speaking of that bullpen, it's been up and down through a lot of the season, and you certainly had a mixed bag in a way over the weekend, but particularly talking about the guys that came in and closed. Veach on Friday, Pitzer on Saturday, and then Polk on Sunday. Completely lights out between the 4 innings, between those 3 guys, only giving up 1 hit, no runs, and 4 strikeouts. What did you see out of the guys that came in and closed things out for the Gamecocks over the weekend?
Yeah, it's a case, when we win, we do a player to game on the field. So kind of in these first few times, this is new to me. I wait, and everybody tells me who to do. I stood up on Saturday, and I grabbed thing, and Derek said, whoa, we're going to talk about player to game? I said, no, it's Tyler Pitzer. I don't need to discuss this. To come in like he did on Saturday, Tyler, I've been there many times coaching. You lose those games on Saturday a lot in Gainesville when they had come all the way back. They got the 4-run 8th inning going, and they're ready to get you in the 9th. For Tyler Pitzer to come out and give up 1 hit, 1 walk, strike out 2 in that 9th and get the save, he was my player of the game. I didn't care what anybody was saying. So I think they've responded very well. I joked with Derek yesterday. I said the way might be to say Eli Jones is pitching on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, TBA. If you don't pitch on Friday, be ready to go Saturday. If you don't go Saturday, be ready to go Sunday. And that might be the way these guys handle the roles as they're presented to them.
Well, everybody's going to need to be ready to go not only this weekend, but next weekend as well, as you get set to take on Arkansas and Kentucky in consecutive series. The 2 best teams in the SEC overall combined 35-4 record in conference play. How ready is this Gamecocks team for this challenge this next 2 weekends?
Well, the biggest part of that equation is you get to play at Founders Park. And that, to me, if you had to look at your schedule, I don't think any of us predicted Kentucky was going to be 14-1. We all thought Arkansas would be right there at the top. But to get to play them at home, I think is a huge advantage for us. They're going to be really good. I mean, they're going to come in here, and you're going to get to see the best of the SEC. But, man, when you get to play at Founders Park, there's just something special about it. When our fans are here and we're in our park, you get to hit last, which is a big deal because it gives you that I know I got one more chance feeling. So if it's going to match up this way, I'm glad we're playing them at home.
Well, certainly looking forward to the next couple of contests, and hopefully things continue to trend in the right direction for the Gamecocks, picking up the big series win this past weekend in Gainesville. And looking forward to hearing you and Derek on the call.
Well, I appreciate it. We're going down to Charleston tomorrow night. That's always a tough one against the Citadel, so looking forward to it. And then 2 great weekends coming up for sure, Tyler.
I appreciate it as always, Coach.
Yeah, man, thank you.
And that's Coach Stuart Lake, and he is right there going on the road tomorrow night, taking on the Citadel down there in Charleston. Pregame coverage starting at 6:45 for a 7 o'clock first pitch. Also going to hear from Coach Kingston on Wednesday with Carolina Calls, coming up at 6 o'clock right here on the Game. Then again, this weekend series taking on Arkansas, and the next weekend taking on Kentucky, which again is not going to be easy for the Gamecocks, but again, hopefully can ride that momentum from what you had this past weekend down there in Gainesville into another successful weekend series taking on the Razorbacks out at Founders Park. Speaking of baseball, I want to hit this really quick. Unfortunate news coming out for the Atlanta Braves over the weekend as they lost their ace of staff, Spencer Strider, to that injury for the for the rest of the season, as that was suffered the other day. And he's somebody that was obviously going to be counted on a lot this season, being the again your usual number one starter for the game for the I almost said the Gamecocks, for the Braves this year. But repairing that ulnar collateral ligament in his right elbow, that's going to keep him out for the rest of the year. So very unfortunate for the Braves losing their ace of staff and Spencer Strider. Let's go with cut number 18 here, Dave. Here is Brian Snitker. This was a couple days ago after Strider suffered that injury. Just kind of speaking in general to the issues that pitchers have been having as of late, in Major League Baseball.
Throwing harder than ever and spinning the ball more than ever, and I don't know. I mean, it's just I hate it for everybody concerned, because that's the biggest thing we have in our game, man, is the pitching, and I have a lot of opinions on it. See a lot of guys going down. I know that.
And the Players Association, kind of grouped together Spencer Strider and a lot of other pitchers that have suffered these type of injuries earlier on the season. And fortunately, Spencer Strider's not going to have to, to get Tommy John surgery or anything like that. But a lot of these pitchers are suffering these strains, and the Players Association was pointing out the fact that they thought it was coming from the pitch clock and just these pitchers having to throw pitch after pitch after pitch after pitch, one right after the other, not giving that same recovery time they used to have before the pitch clock came along. Major League Baseball pointed out there is no direct correlation between the pitch clock and the advent of these injuries getting any worse. Brian Snitker brings up the point there that I think it's just these guys throwing at high velocity. I mean, everybody's going out there having to throw 95, 100 miles an hour, pitch after pitch after pitch after pitch, to where it didn't used to be that case as much anymore. And we have so much advancements in technology and pitching coaches and all that kind of stuff, to where just everybody comes into the major leagues throwing at this high velocity. And if you haven't figured it out, the human body's not meant to do that 100 times over the course of an hour and a half, once a week, like these starting pitchers are being asked to do. And that adds up. And it's unfortunate a guy like Spencer Strider is 25 years old, very young, but, is having to deal with these elbow injuries that hopefully he can recover from and come back, just as strong, if not stronger than before. But it is unfortunate, and that's just a part of the game. And, everybody having to go out there and give it 110% on every single pitch. And, these kind of things are the unfortunate result of that being kind of where the game of Major League Baseball is as of right now. So unfortunate loss for the Braves, for the rest of the season, losing Spencer Strider. Still a very good team, still a very good offensive team. And, we'll see how the Braves, how the Braves respond from this and, go through the rest of the season without Spencer Strider, this time around. It's game week for the Gamecocks football team in a way, as the spring game coming up on Saturday. We'll dive into that, as well as some other spring games going on around the country this past weekend, as the spring session of football is starting to come to an end, with the transfer portal opening up tomorrow. We'll dive into all that coming up. It's the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Monday on the Game. It's the Extra Point. Tyler Head with you on this Monday morning here on the game. As I mentioned earlier, it is game week. Taking on themselves, but South Carolina spring game coming up Saturday night, 7 o'clock out there at Williams-Brice Stadium. We'll have full coverage for you right here on the game, by the way. Also, reminder, coming up on Thursday night, we're going to have Carolina Calls with Coach Beamer at 6 o'clock right here on the game, get his final thoughts on, spring practice leading up to the spring game and kind of give us a preview of what we're going to see on Saturday night out there at Willie B. And there are obviously so many questions about this Gamecock team, in general, going into the 2024 season with so many guys coming in, going out, and so many position battles going on and kind of figuring out who's going to be getting what reps at what spots for, for this upcoming season. And I'm not expecting many questions to get answered on Saturday night, and they usually don't get answered as far as the spring game goes, but it'll be good to see these guys in action, see a lot of these guys in Gamecock uniforms for the first time in a true game-like setting, and, kind of get a glimpse into what the fall is going to look like once everything is all settled out between all those different, position battles. Obviously hope nobody gets hurt. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing is you don't want, any significant injuries that are going to, bleed over into fall camp or anything like that could have a drastic effect on the season. Of course, Jalen Nichols, got hurt in the spring last year, and that kind of started the ripple effect of what would come to be a tumultuous fall for injuries, specifically from an offensive line standpoint. So hopefully you can avoid that, this upcoming weekend. As I mentioned, the transfer portal opens tomorrow, and the last week of spring practice and the spring game gives you the last chance to kind of finalize where you're at with guys. And again, you're not necessarily deciding the starting lineup or the depth chart based on this weekend, but it gives you a good gauge of being able to tell guys where they stand and what the potential for them this fall is going to be. And Coach Beamer, as the coaching staff does every single spring, is going to sit down with these guys starting Monday and give a true assessment of where he thinks they are and what their potential of playing is going to be this fall. And some guys are going to like what they hear, and some guys aren't going to like what they hear. And I feel like most of them probably have an idea of where they're at. And there may be some guys that are already kind of leaning towards the transfer portal, but having that sit down with Beamer and staff, maybe kind of, that final push in whatever direction to say, you know what, I came here, I thought I was going to have the opportunity to start or play a featured role at whatever position I'm at. That obviously doesn't seem to be the case. Let me go explore my opportunities in the transfer portal and maybe find some playing time elsewhere. And that's just a natural progression of college football. You certainly would love to have everybody stay and have 100% retention each and every year when it comes to guys staying with your program. But that's just not the reality of college football. You're going to lose guys. You're already accounting for guys that you're going to lose. You may not know the specific names as of yet, but you can factor in most of the time with transfer portal cycles, whether it be in the wintertime or the one that you have that opens up in the spring, saying, okay, we're probably going to lose a handful. And for some teams, that may be 5 or 6. For some teams, that may be 10 or 12, just depending on what's going on with your program. So for South Carolina, again, you're probably going to lose a few guys, but you're also going to have the opportunity to bring some guys in. So it all ends up balancing out at the end of the day. And while many have been critical of Carolina not ending spring practice until after the transfer portal opens, you are going to be a little behind as far as guys entering the portal, because again, you're looking at maybe about a week until some of these guys do start to put their names in the portal after these meetings with Coach Beamer and company. But you've got guys on your staff that are being tasked with evaluating the transfer portal, looking what's out there and seeing what kind of talent you could potentially bring in. Maybe you're bringing in that wide receiver that's 6'3" or 6'4" that can solidify your number one spot. Maybe you're looking for more depth at, a certain position or whatever it may be out in the transfer portal, that those options are going to be out there. Can you get somebody? That's the $1 million question. Just because you go after someone doesn't mean they're obviously going to come to your school, but, we'll see what's, see what becomes of the spring portal window that, again, opens up tomorrow, and what effect that has on everybody else in the country as well, because you just, you just truly never know. As most teams did wrap up their spring practice this past weekend, that culminated with their spring game, and many of those teams were ones within the SEC. And everybody's trying to answer questions this offseason. And there's perhaps no program that has more questions being asked about it than the University of Alabama, with Kalen DeBoer taking over for Nick Saban. Let's go cut number 12 here, Dave. Here's Kalen DeBoer giving his assessment of his first spring game as the head coach at Alabama.
Scrimmage-wise, shoot, if it was a half, right, it'd been a tale of two halves. But that's why I keep playing. So many things that we're going to get to learn from this scrimmage. Depending what side of the ball you're on. So I think overall, I was trying to keep track during, so I might be off, but I think we had 6 penalties between the two sides, which over whatever's 85 plays probably roughly. Kind of guessing that's not too bad. That's actually, improved each and every scrimmage. So I'm looking at those things and where we're improving. Rushing touchdowns offensively, the response defensively, getting down early, and some of those things. Little things that the game brings with the TV. ESPN broadcasting it, and us working through TV timeouts and when to take the huddle and just talking through that. Right now, not that big of a deal if we're out there standing over the ball, but it will be this fall. And just a lot of things with guys who have never had that game action, starting from the quarterbacks to, the rest of offense and defensive sides. So, I thought it was a good overall scrimmage. Again, both sides kind of had their moments. So,
I saw a picture on Saturday that was last year's University of Washington spring game crowd compared to the one at Tuscaloosa. And when you talk about night and day, I think if the reality of how different the culture is down there in Alabama compared to up there in Seattle, if it hasn't hit Kalen DeBoer yet, it probably did on Saturday, because you went from playing in front of probably your players' families, and at least that's what Husky Stadium looked like with how few people are in it, to playing in front of almost a sold-out stadium in the middle of April for a scrimmage with your own team. Like, it's a different deal down here. And again, I'm sure Kalen DeBoer very aware of that, but just another dose of reality of what he is now leading coming his way on Saturday out there in Tuscaloosa. And again, everybody has a lot of questions, but the biggest question is, how is he going to lead what has been the dynasty of college football for the past decade and a half under Nick Saban? Now, he's not Nick Saban. He's not going to accomplish as much as Nick Saban. I don't know if anybody's going to ever accomplish as much as Nick Saban has in such a short time at the University of Alabama. But how does he go about following that up? He's a different kind of coach. He does not appear to be the same fiery, as hard-nosed type of coach that Nick Saban was. Doesn't mean he's not a good coach. He just led Washington to the national championship this past year. Still a very good coach, but goes about things a little bit differently. And the big question is, can he get the most out of the talent that he has there, like Saban was able to? And yes, Saban was bringing in 4- and 5-star guys every single year, but he was always in the mix for the national championship. Never lost more than 1 or 2 games a season. Like, that's getting the most out of your high-caliber talent. Can Kalen DeBoer continue to do that at Alabama, or does it fall off? Do they suddenly become an 8-4 team on a year-in, year-out basis? Are they only making one playoff out of every 6 years, or whatever it may be? Those are the questions that we don't know, that this fall is going to tell us a lot of how different, if any different at all, this program is going to be under Kalen DeBoer. One of my big questions is, how many guys opt to go in the transfer portal now that spring is over at Alabama? Because a lot of them, I'm sure, gave him the benefit of the doubt. And he comes in there with a team meeting, and there were some guys that obviously transferred out as soon as they heard that Saban was gone, because it's more about the coach than it is about the actual university and the name on the front of the jersey type thing. But I'm sure a lot of them gave him the benefit of the doubt. Like, hey, I'm here. Let's see what this guy's going to be and if I want to play for him. And now that you've had a month of spring practice and to really get a gauge of how good he is, how many guys decide to go in the transfer portal tomorrow or over the course of the next couple days that just say, yeah, I gave this guy a chance, but not my vibe. I'm not feeling it. I don't think we're going to be as good as we were under Coach Saban. Let me go explore my opportunities out there elsewhere. That is going to be something very, very interesting to see with this Alabama football team as we transition out of spring with them. We'll dive into some more programs around the country that had their spring games over the weekend, specifically across the SEC. Do want to remind you about the craft beer card. It is back. You can spend $30 at a brewery at 12 craft beer locations, $360 value, all yours for only $79. Go online to 1075thegame.com and click on the Sweet Deals tab for your chance to purchase the craft beer card. Other spring games going on around the SEC. We'll hear from the coaches coming up. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Monday on the Game. It's the Extra Point. Tyler Head on your Monday. Captain Dave producing on the other side of the glass. It was a busy weekend on all fronts for sports. A lot of spring games going on. Just talked about Alabama's spring game out there in Tuscaloosa over the weekend, but also over there in Athens, a couple hours away. You guys had G-Day with the Georgia spring game. Actually ended up in a tie, funny enough. And, Georgia this past year looked to be well on the way to maybe having a third straight national championship. That was all derailed with the loss to Alabama in the SEC championship game. But I don't think anybody was denying that Georgia was legitimately one of the best teams in the country. Of course, when you lose the SEC championship game with all the other controversy going on with the college football playoff, I think we all understood why they were not included. But you can't deny how good of a team that was this past year, and proceeded to, beat the life out of Florida State in the Orange Bowl, to cap off the year. But Georgia still just strong as ever, it seems like that. And, when you look at this offseason, similar to what I talked about a few minutes ago, the Alabama problem they had for not even a problem, but the headline of every offseason with Alabama under Nick Saban was, all right, well, they've lost X amount of guys to the NFL draft. How do they, reload and come back as strong next year? Same thing happening with Georgia now. You lose Brock Bowers, you lose Lad McConkey, you lose some of those guys in the back end of the defense that, Kamari Laster, guys like that, were high-level contributors to your program. How do you reload, and how do you come back just as strong or stronger than before? Here's Kirby Smart's assessment on what he saw at a G-Day on Saturday. Cut number 13 here, Dave.
Thought our players handled it the right way. I wanted to handle it like a game, very game-like situations. Next time we put on those uniforms, it'll be for real. And we'll be playing in Atlanta against a really good opponent. So we want to find out where we are as a team and get a lot of guys reps. We're kind of where we got guys that have got a lot of work and a lot of reps, fifth-year, fourth-year guys, and then we've got about 40 guys that are in their first year. So the discrepancy between old and young is really great. I thought the defense played much better today than they did in previous scrimmages in terms of energy, enthusiasm, running to the ball. We rushed the passer better today. Offense probably didn't have as good a day as maybe they've had in the two scrimmages, but some of that was dictated by the terms of which we scrimmaged with, which was passing and loose plays, and they did a nice job handling that in the second half. But overall, I don't evaluate things on today. I know you guys will ask questions and talk about today. For me, it was about the entire spring, 15 practices. Very pleased with our health coming out of it.
And I don't think anybody's doubting this team. I think we're all expecting them to be just as good as they were a season ago, and they certainly look that way, in the spring game. And again, you can't glean everything from the spring game, but you see a lot of talent on the field once again for Georgia. Bring back Carson Beck for another year at quarterback. Tons of depth at running back. Obviously Trevor Etienne transferring over from Florida, assuming he can stay out of trouble and actually stay on the field. Roderick Robinson, who looks like a monster, going to be getting a lot of carries as well. Young talent filling holes on the defense. Michael Williams on the defensive line, I think is somebody that's going to be, primed for a very big year at Georgia this upcoming season. I think a lot of people are rightfully so penciling them in to be in the college football playoff, before the season even starts, which is not a crazy thing to expect with Georgia. Another team that I think a lot of people are going to go ahead and pencil in for the college football playoff, I myself am already doing this, is Ole Miss. Ole Miss, another program that had its spring game this past weekend, but they did it a little bit differently than everybody else, and maybe have set a new trend for what college football spring games might end up being. Here is Lane Kiffin, cut number 15 here, Dave, talking about what they refer to as the Grove Bowl games.
All right, I thought that was really neat. I thought a lot went into that, and may not seem like it, but I guess kind of now I have appreciation for shows or concerts and different things that have to happen. So spent a lot of time in different walkthroughs of events and orders and changing ideas up. So thought it went really good, and the number one thing was no injuries. So a lot of times you stand up here after a spring game and got to go through medical report after this with the doctors and the trainer, so that's really good. But I just thought it was pretty neat to see guys compete, and a lot of people doing different events, and then the team down and blue team I think down, and Joey to tag in and help the blue team out for the win was pretty neat. And so I hope our fans enjoyed it. I know our players did, and so we actually have one more light practice probably Monday to officially end spring with the 15th day, but I thought it was a really good spring for what we wanted accomplished, maybe not what other people do as far as staying healthy and getting a lot of reps and work without a lot of tackling.
So if you didn't see this, what Ole Miss did, as opposed to the traditional scrimmage type game that we see most places do, they played 7-on-7. They actually cut the field in half. It was like a 40, 50-yard field as opposed to the full 100-yard field. But between the quarters of these games, they had little like mini games, very akin to like what the Pro Bowl has become with the skills challenge and all that kind of stuff. Let's see, they had a dunk contest. They played tug of war. There was an obstacle course. They even had Joey Chestnut having a hot dog eating contest at halftime. Like, they very much turned this into like a fun type of event. The players really seem to love it. One of those things where you can just have good competition within your team. Very much Lane Kiffin-esque. Like, he's the exact type of coach I think would come up with something like this. And I do wonder, how many other programs around the country might look at that and say, yeah, that's something we could do, because we've focused so much on like restructuring the spring game by turning it into an actual contest where you're playing like a Furman or a Wofford or some FCS school in state or nearby, as opposed to playing them in the fall where you don't have to, worry about that cupcake on your schedule, during the season, dinging your resume or anything like that, and just creating what is usually an uninteresting game for the most part. But this is a good idea. This is something that creates a more interesting environment, something to keep fans engaged as well, because let's all face it, you go to these spring games and yeah, you're excited to see the starters, but by the time they get down to the walk-ons in the third quarter, most people are already leaving to go ahead and beat the traffic. And, this is something that is a little bit outside the box that I think a lot of other programs might eventually fall into adopting themselves. For Ole Miss, again, I have them penciled into the college football playoff. I just think there's so much talent on this team. It's almost impossible to not be successful. Obviously, coming off their most successful season as a program really ever this past year with Lane Kiffin. You bring back Jackson Dart. You have a ton of talent coming in the transfer portal, and that's honestly an understatement, because they've used their NIL money very, very well. I'll say that much. You bring in Quinshon Judkins, or not Quinshon Judkins. You lose Quinshon Judkins to the University of Ole Miss, but you bring in a ton of talent to fill in a ton of holes on that team. Juice Wells obviously coming in from South Carolina. Princely U from Florida coming in at edge. You have Logan Diggs, who transferred from LSU. Just tons of guys, a lot of guys on the offensive line. Like, you've got talent everywhere on this team that it's almost impossible for them not to be successful. And remember, with the new college football playoff, you don't have to win 10, 11 games and win your conference. If you go 9-3 in the SEC, you're in. And I think Ole Miss, they do have a tough schedule, including coming to Williams-Brice Stadium. But I think Ole Miss is a team that's perfectly positioned to be that, at worst, 9-3 and still make the college football playoff, which for the folks out there, they'd be over the moon about. That'd be living up to what they thought Lane Kiffin would be able to do for that program. So, again, just a couple of spring games going on this weekend for three teams that are going to be positioned at the top of the SEC when the fall rolls around. Come back and wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point. Mark Pope being introduced as the new coach at the University of Kentucky, putting out a bold proclamation in doing so, but things already getting off to a little bit of a rocky start. I'll dive into that coming up. It's The Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on this Monday on The Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head with you. A couple more minutes to go, wrapping up today's edition. Wes and Chris will jump in here with me at the top of the 11 o'clock hour for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Last week, we talked so much about the Kentucky head coaching search as John Calipari takes this deal to go to Arkansas and become their new head coach, leaving Kentucky after a decade and a half. And the Kentucky faithful very excited to see Calipari go, as they kind of had grown tired of him, and very excited about the potential of a new head coach. Was it going to be Dan Hurley? Was it going to be Billy Donovan? Was it going to be Scott Drew? It ended up being none of those guys, and they ended up hiring Mark Pope from BYU, a former alumni of the University of Kentucky, but didn't garner as much excitement from the fan base when that decision was made. Regardless, they rolled out the red carpet and introduced him as the new head coach over the weekend out there at Rupp Arena. And Mark Pope, being an alumni and a former Wildcat himself, understands what he's there to do. Let's hear from him. Cut number 22, Dave.
One other way where I want to blow up this press conference, and I'm going to get crushed for doing this. Every coach in America at every other job in America stands up at that press conference and they try and moderate expectations. We don't do that here in Kentucky. When Mitch called me and talked to me about being the head coach here at Kentucky, I understand the assignment. We are here to win banners.
And he's 100% right on that. And when you come to Kentucky, you're expected to win banners and a lot of banners, to be in the Final Four pretty frequently, to win national championships, the whole 9 yards, which is why, Coach Calipari, the fan base had grown weary of him, that he was not doing that anymore. He was getting beat in the first and second round of the NCAA tournament, and that's just not the standard that they hold out there at the University of Kentucky, which, by the way, you heard the thunderous applause for Mark Pope there. I think Kentucky is the only program in the country that could sell out its basketball arena for a press conference. And it looked like that's exactly what they did. There may have been a few empty seats, but there weren't a whole lot as they truly packed out Rupp Arena for the introduction of Mark Pope as the head coach. They drove the bus in there. The 1996 national championship team got off the bus to hype him up. Like, it was a whole ordeal, which again is what you kind of expect up there at the University of Kentucky when it comes to their men's basketball program. So he won the press conference, which, hey, that's step number one, I guess. But now you got to win on the court. And you got to go out there and you have to prove that, you understand the assignment. I get that. But you have to prove that you are capable of fulfilling said assignment by being the coach that Kentucky is hoping that you can be. And, we'll see how he does with that. I will say it's not getting off to the best start as of right now, as this story literally flashed across my phone about 10 minutes ago from the ESPN app. But Kentucky has lost another high-profile recruit in Boogie Fland, who's a 5-star, that has decommitted from the upcoming class for South Carolina, as he is the 4th member of this class to do so since John Calipari has left the Kentucky program. And again, Kentucky, whichever program goes into every season hoping, hey, let's go win a national championship, let's go make a deep Final Four run and all that kind of stuff. But, the players themselves, especially these high-level players, 4- and 5-star talents, they're looking out for their own personal interest. They want to go play in the NBA. And for the past 15 some odd years, when you play for John Calipari at Kentucky, you got a good shot at going to the NBA. A lot of guys do it on the one and done. Or say, okay, I'm going to go there for 2 semesters, and then I'm going to go be a millionaire in the NBA. And not that you don't care about what happens, but it's not as big a concern. Like, if you get eliminated in the first round of the tournament, okay, well, I'm going to go get drafted here in a couple months, no skin off my bones. But now that Calipari has moved on, you got to see if Mark Pope can retain that same amount of talent, because it's about the coach and the development more than it is about the brand of the university itself. If these guys want to still continue to, use Kentucky as a pipeline to the NBA, which I don't know if it will be. Again, there's going to be no bigger questions around a single program in college basketball this year than what is going to be around Kentucky and if Mark Pope can go there and be successful. Again, it's great to see a guy returning home. That's very cool. But he doesn't quite have the track record, especially in the NCAA tournament, as you would think a new hire as the Kentucky head coach would have. But we'll see what happens. If he is not successful in the first handful of years, I believe the Kentucky contingent is going to be ready to run him out of town after year number 3 if they're not in a Final Four by that point in time. But again, he knows what he's signing up for. He knows he's there to hang banners, and we'll see if he has the opportunity to do that. If he has the opportunity to pull in some good recruits. As again, a lot of the guys jumping ship with John Calipari exiting to go to Arkansas. That'll do it for today's edition of the Extra Point. Coming up next, it is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. We'll jump back into the conversation about baseball as well as talk some football recruiting as well coming up in the next hour here on The Game.